What's happening, everyone, and welcome back to Shady Spotlight, where we dive deep into the stories that shape our world. The news cycle is spinning faster than ever, and if you blink, you might just miss the biggest updates. Today, we've got a packed show with some truly unmissable insights that you absolutely need to hear. Get ready, because we're about to break down the moments that matter, the decisions that echo, and the performances that define. We're talking about artists pushing boundaries, unexpected creative journeys, and the raw, unfiltered moments that make us human. So buckle up, stay tuned, and make sure you're subscribed so you never miss a beat. Let's get into it. First up, we're heading to the Telluride Film Festival for a look at a new film that's capturing the essence of a legendary artist. It's a raw and fearless portrait of a musician in search of himself, diving deep into the creation of a pivotal album. We're talking about Jeremy Allen White stepping into the shoes of a rock icon, exploring a period of intense personal struggle and artistic defiance. This isn't your typical biopic. It's a journey into the soul of creativity itself, and it's generating serious buzz. Get ready for a deep dive into Springsteen, Deliver Me From Nowhere. Next, we're shifting gears to explore a fascinating dynamic in the music world, focusing on a partnership that produced some of rock's most iconic sounds. Think about those legendary songwriting duos, the ones where talent just clicked. This story highlights a collaboration that was all about mutual respect and elevating the song, rather than personal rivalry. We'll uncover the secrets behind some electrifying guitar solos and a creative process that valued spontaneity. Prepare to be amazed by the story behind a guitar solo that was so powerful. It was described as religious. And in our third spotlight, we're venturing into the world of cinema with a review that paints a vivid picture of a gambler's descent into a neon-lit hellscape. This film plunges you into the heart of Macau, showcasing a performance that masterfully balances insatiable optimism with crushing desperation. It's a dark fable anchored by a jittery tour de force, where the stakes are high and the consequences are dire. We'll explore the hallucinatory journey of a man trapped by debt and criminality, a performance that's drawing major attention. Finally, we're bringing you another cinematic gem, this one focusing on the inverse of passion and power, a life absent of animating spirits. It's a contemplative look at a former president wrestling with profound decisions, grief, and the struggle to reconnect. This film offers poetic images and big ideas, exploring the quiet moments of a life seeking to shock itself awake. Prepare for a thoughtful examination of legacy and self-reflection. Don't miss any of these incredible stories. Make sure you're subscribed, hit that notification bell, and smash that like button. We've got so much more coming your way. Springsteen, Deliver Me From Nowhere review. Jeremy Allen White in Scott Cooper's raw and fearless portrait of an artist searching for himself, Telluride Film Festival. A raw portrait of an artist's struggle. It's always interesting seeing movies explore the creative process, such as what Steven Spielberg did recently in The Fabelmans or larger-scale enterprises like the Oscar-winning Amadeus. But Mozart wasn't around to give his okay to that particular film. Bruce Springsteen, however, after turning down numerous past attempts and offers, is around to pass judgment on director-writer Scott Cooper's anti-biopic Springsteen. Deliver Me From Nowhere, which prefers to focus on the man, in a key moment of his life and career, creating his sixth studio album Nebraska, as he resisted all commercial temptation to find himself and the truth in his art. It would seem for a major star, who 6 years earlier had appeared simultaneously on the covers of Time and Newsweek, and had just come off a wildly successful release and tour for his fifth album The River, a bit of a risk. But as this exceptional film shows, it wasn't a risk to Springsteen, it was a necessity. In this way, Cooper has defiantly not made a so-called biopic, but rather contributed a snapshot in time and a portrait of what drives the creative process. No easy feat, even as it has been attempted many times in Hollywood films, some good, some legendarily dishonest. The film had its world premiere today at the Telluride Film Festival. This one, the first major narrative movie about Springsteen, plays it on its own terms and its own truths, just like the boss himself did in creating the most unique album of his career in 1981, when despite appearances, the walls were tumbling down. If some fans go in expecting the equivalent of a greatest hits package, think again. Springsteen, Deliver Me From Nowhere is the real deal, an intelligent, deliberately paced journey into the soul of an artist. Intriguingly, it has something in common with another film that is playing at Telluride this weekend and debuted earlier in the week at Venice, J. Kelly, in which George Clooney leads as a major movie star suddenly questioning his worth, value, and identity as a man and as an artist. But that is fictional. Springsteen is real. With Warren Zane's 2023 book Deliver Me From Nowhere as its source material, Cooper laser focuses on a year where Springsteen, played with conviction and authenticity by Jeremy Allen White, was experiencing depression and past trauma, haunted by his late father, and unsure how to view encroaching mega success. Perhaps feeling unfaithful to and dishonest toward the blue-collar, working-class people who drove his emergence to the pinnacle of fame in the music business. Against all odds, and certainly the wishes of Columbia Records, which wanted another hit-generating record to follow the river, Springsteen had another idea, as this movie details what inspired Nebraska, including a deep dive into several books, the influence of Terrence Malick's 1973 film Badlands, Flannery O'Connor, The Suicides, first album, and real-life killers Charles Starkweather and Carol Fugate among other creative drivers. Not exactly the same old, same old. In many ways, it is an album about loneliness, and it seems appropriate that Springsteen was not in the studio with his band for its core recording, rather simply alone in his New Jersey bedroom with an acoustic guitar and a 4-track recorder where he performed the 10 tracks that would eventually make the playlist, from the title song to Mansion on a Hill to Atlantic City to Reason to Believe, but not some future smashes like Born in the USA, Glory Days, I'm on Fire, and more that would be jettisoned to the next album, in the process keeping it about as pure as it gets. Springsteen wouldn't even allow his photo to appear on the album cover, instead choosing a black-and-white image from the POV of the inside of a car traveling down a desolate highway on a cloudy day. One of my favorite scenes has Springsteen's longtime manager John Landau, Jeremy Strong, going into Columbia exec Al Teller's David Krumholtz office to explain to him that there will be no press, no singles, no tour, and no photo of Bruce for the release of the album. Bruce wants it just out there for people to discover and interpret on their own. The dynamic between the two is worth the price of admission, but as Teller finally agrees to do what they can to support the album, it's a triumph of artistry over commercialism that in this cold, corporate Donald Trump era, some 4+ decades later, is hard to imagine going down like that. The film plays in 2 eras weaved in and out. Springsteen's childhood in the 50s is in black and white as we see the stern father, Doug Stephen Graham, not in line to win Dad of the Year, a man who comes home and starts drinking, and young Bruce, played nicely by Matthew Pellicano, getting the brunt of his neglect. It clearly wasn't a happy childhood, thus Cooper and his cinematographer Masanobu Takenaga's decision to leave out the color. The other part, of course, is the early 80s and creation of the record, a time where Springsteen, though in a dour state of mind, was also finding romance as seen in the film by the presence of the fictional Faye Romano, meant to represent multiple women in his life at the time and effectively played by Odessa Young. This relationship, though, seems more a convenience for dramatic license, and perhaps deviates a little too much from a film that otherwise feels 100% authentic to the core of Springsteen and his life crisis at this time. It is a minor flaw in an otherwise admirable film. We also see the importance of Landau in his life and career, a supportive but honest guide who is there every step of the way to keep the wolves out. Others include good friend and guitar tech Mike Batlin, Paul Walterhauser, and his wonderful mother Adele Springsteen, Gaby Hoffman, even though those roles are underwritten compared to others. Graham, enjoying the biggest success of his career right now with the multi-Emmy-nominated Adolescence, could not be better as his father, all his scenes in flashback, and filtered through Bruce's memories. Also impressive is a brief turn by Mark Maron as producer, audio and recording engineer Chuck Plotkin, who had the unenviable task of somehow making those self-recorded 4-track cuts stand up to the expected quality consumers would expect. It is fascinating to see how he was able to pull it off. And let's give a big shout-out to casting director Francine Maisler and those who put the band back together. That is, the actors who play the E Street Band. With his high-profile TV role in The Bear, White has to fight that kind of familiarity and somehow convince us he is one of the greatest rock stars in history at his lowest point ever. Mission accomplished. White, with no prior history in singing or playing guitar, studied for 5 months with a vocal coach as well as guitar experts. The results speak for themselves. He is utterly convincing on every count, but this is no mere SNL-style imitation. White gets to the essence of the man without copying him, but the transformation is nothing less than stunning, reminding me of what Sissy Spacek was able to accomplish playing Loretta Lynn in Coal Miner's Daughter. Even as, like White, the legend she was playing was very much alive and watching. No pressure there at all, right? Give White props, especially for delivering this moving portrait of Springsteen from nowhere. Inevitably, there will be comparisons to last year's Oscar-nominated Bob Dylan film, A Complete Unknown, which focused solely on the earliest years of Dylan as channeled through Timothée Chalamet. Almost harder to achieve, though, is capturing a star much further along and at the crossroads of his career, a crisis point where it just wasn't in the cards to only play the hits. It is watching the birth of a true artist, free now to go his own way, and one who is still very much evolving. After more than half a century at it, Springsteen's glory days may be aging, but with the hope of the future informed by his past, he still rocks. Producers are Cooper, Ellen Goldsmith-Vane, Eric Robinson, and Scott Stuber. Title: Springsteen, Deliver Me From Nowhere Festival, Telluride Distributor, 20th Century Studios Disney Release Date, Oct. 24, 2025 Director-Screenwriter, Scott Cooper Cast, Jeremy Allen White, Jeremy Strong, Paul Walter Hauser, Stephen Graham, Odessa Young, David Krumholtz, Gaby Hoffman, Grace Gummer, Mark Maron, Matthew Pellicano, Harrison Sloan Gilbertson. Running time, 1 HR 54 mins. Critics are praising Jeremy Allen White's transformative performance and Scott Cooper's sensitive direction, calling the film a profound look into an artist's creative and personal struggles. But what happens when the creative spark is fueled by darkness? We're about to dive into a story about a guitar solo that literally blew minds. Telluride Film Festival Review. Springsteen, Deliver Me From Nowhere is a stunning look inside the soul of an artist struggling with depression. A stunning look inside the soul of an artist struggling with depression. Depression can cripple a person. It's also something any of us can struggle with, whether it's clinical and consistent or time to time. Having the ability to talk about it and overcome it is what matters, and that is a more recent occurrence in society. That even someone like Bruce Springsteen can suffer from devastating depression at the heights of success speaks to its universality. It also provides the backbone for Springsteen. Deliver Me From Nowhere, a meditative and stunning musical biopic that's one of the best films of the year, let alone the Telluride Film Festival, where it kicked off the fest with its world premiere, as well as, in its climax, one of the most important. The Boss story has the potential to save lives. Springsteen, Deliver Me From Nowhere takes one Springsteen's darkest and most formative moments, as well as a period of creative inflection, and crafts a portrait that's deliberate, solemn, and positively captivating. It would have been easy, if reductive, to make a traditional biopic here. Instead, we have a moment in time that's almost like an internal chamber piece, as Springsteen not only struggles with his demons, but struggles to even understand them, let alone fight them. Even knowing that he'll find a light at the end of the tunnel, given how he's thriving to this day, takes nothing away from the emotion and pain that you feel for his suffering. The acting, filmmaking, and soul of this movie all combine to take your breath away. After a brief introduction to the Boss as a child, where Adele Springsteen, Gaby Hoffman, sends her young son into a bar to retrieve his father Douglas Springsteen, Stephen Graham, we fast forward to 1981. There, Bruce Springsteen, Jeremy Allen White, is closing out the River Tour at the Cincinnati Coliseum with a rendition of Born to Run that brings the house down. From there, it's home to New Jersey, where he's rented a home in Colts Neck to figure out what's next. His manager and confidant John Landau, Jeremy Strong, hears from the record label that they can't wait for another hit album, though Bruce isn't thinking along those lines, wanting instead to slow down. Being in Jersey has him thinking about the painful memories of his past, mainly with his father, and how his dad's struggles may be unavoidable for himself. He also finds himself connecting with his early music days at the Stone Pony, where he meets single mother Faye, Odessa Young, though her affection only gives him temporary solace. It's while adrift at home that he finds Badlands on television and becomes intrigued by the Charles Starkweather murder spree. That darkness and guilt gets him writing music, at first just on a whim, but then with a purpose. Setting up shop in his bedroom and working only with guitar tech Mike Batlin, Paul Walter-Hauser, on basic equipment, he begins recording the demos for what will become Nebraska. Going into the studio, the band working on these songs doesn't feel right to Bruce, leading him to scrap any of the rock songs, including Born in the USA. John supports Bruce when he decides to master the demos, despite how comparatively accidental they sound, but he admits to not understanding what his friend is going through. His concern rises, and his protective instincts increase not just when the record company is aghast at what they're expected to release, but also at how it seems like Bruce is suffering in a way he can't help with. As Bruce sinks deeper into what's clearly depression, he pushes away Faye, deals with the past and present of his father, and wonders what the world has left for him. Ultimately, it's only when he asks for help at his lowest that a path forward emerges, one that in short order would make him one of history's biggest and best rock and roll artists. Jeremy Allen White becomes the boss here in a way that's beyond appearance. He's capturing the feel of Bruce Springsteen, especially at his most human and vulnerable moments. There's a natural quality to the performance that gets at the deeper truth of the man. White does his own singing and is spectacular there, finding the soul of Springsteen instead of simply imitating. It's a stunning turn and the best work of his career so far. A nomination for Best Actor at the Academy Awards is more than deserved. Jeremy Strong is excellent playing John Landau, capturing the dedication and warmth of the man. Strong has some quiet moments where he really shines, never overdoing it. Odessa Young brings pluck and spunk to the love interest role, generating a different vibe out of White and making their scenes together stand out as different from the rest in the film. Gaby Hoffmann doesn't have too much to do as Bruce's mom, though she captures the heart of the woman who taught him to love dancing and music. Then there's Stephen Graham, who intensely shows the depression that Douglas suffered through his whole life, leading to an only in later years diagnosed mental illness. His later scenes, where he's reflecting on the harm he may have caused to his son, as well as the pride he has in Bruce, is heart-wrenching. Paul Walter-Hauser is very amusing as the technician who first got to hear these songs. Supporting players include Grace Gummer, David Krumholtz, Mark Maron, and Matthew Anthony Pellicano Jr. as young Bruce, plus many more. Filmmaker Scott Cooper does the best work of his career, adapting the Warren Zanes book Deliver Me from Nowhere. Cooper's direction has never been this assured or steady, while his script avoids nearly all of the biopic clichés. He makes this an intelligent and evocative tale, only once showing you Bruce Springsteen the rock and roll god, but when he does, boy does your heart soar. It's in how he captures a lost man that really knocks your socks off. It's truly stunning filmmaking, getting in under 2 hours to tell a tale that gives you a fuller understanding of a legend. Again, this is not your traditional musical biopic. It is very much about one moment in Bruce Springsteen's story, albeit one that would have a lasting impact. Where it begins and where it ends are not where your average movie of this ilk would do so. That's part of the genius here, too, as is the non-preachy way in which it begs anyone in need of help to be strong enough to ask for it. Every scene that could have been a movie of the week is instead understated, only deepening the emotional impact. I was sobbing uncontrollably at times. Springsteen, Deliver Me from Nowhere is one of the best works I'll see in 2025, hands down, as well as sure to be a crowning achievement for Telluride this year. It's stunning and an absolute home run. Whether you love the boss or not, this will give you an entranceway into his soul. We always seek to understand artists, and especially celebrity ones, and Bruce is letting you in here, with Jeremy Allen White as his vessel. I'm still in shock by how amazing this flick is. It's just brilliantly done. Bravo. Score. The film has been lauded for its authentic portrayal of Springsteen's struggles and Jeremy Allen White's career-defining performance, with many critics calling it a masterpiece. But even legends have moments where they're stunned by another's artistry. Prepare for a story about a guitar solo that listeners described as a religious experience. The Sunbreak, a gambler's hallucinatory descent into Macau. Telluride 2025's 52nd show is off and running, and I'm gasping for air, dashing around town to catch as many movies as my human body allows me to over the weekend. We'll be posting quick reactions here and online at joshc/@thesunbreak throughout the weekend, with longer reviews to follow. Springsteen, Deliver Me From Nowhere. Who was it who said all unhappy rock stars are alike? No happy rock star has ever truly existed in the history of this earth. Probably the same writer who famously pondered, "War, what is it good for?" So it is that Scott Cooper takes a turn at the musical biopic for the remaining living legends of the rock canon, here adapting Warren Zane's history of the making of Bruce Springsteen's Nebraska. As with all of these films, it's nearly impossible to make the creation of a great work of art seem anything less than inevitable in the rear-view mirror of history. The splendor of the songs is self-evident, so the pleasure rests entirely on witnessing a facsimile of their creation. The rest, a reliance on literalism, frequent flashbacks to a troubled relationship with a highly troubled father, and the insistence on including a spotty romantic relationship, are all degrees of unnecessary distraction from the main event. Luckily, no one aside from Springsteen himself wears a white t-shirt, weathered flannel, or signature leather jacket quite as well as Jeremy Allen White, who finds ways to ascend beyond the genre's tropes and sweaty mimicry to find some glimmers of deep truth about writing an album as a cry for help. In a welcomely warm turn, Jeremy Strong commits to a terrible haircut to portray longtime manager Jon Landau, who fiercely defends Bruce's creative process and insulates him from the demands of burgeoning stardom. A film like this is right in the sweetest of sweet spots for a Telluride crowd, and the audience ate it up. It didn't hurt that the boss himself made a surprise appearance in town to introduce the film to rapturous applause. Ballad of a Small Player. With his trademark assaultive soundtrack and gorgeously garish neon-lit photography of a city stacked with casinos, Edward Berger casts Macau as a hellscape for a gambler's hallucinatory descent. No one balances insatiable optimism and crushing desperation quite as sweatily as Colin Farrell, who anchors this dark fable with a jittery tour de force performance of a man constantly spinning to create a credible character from whole cloth. As the walls of debt and criminality close in on him, he's somehow wetter and more disheveled in every scene. Tilda Swinton makes an appearance as a woman in pursuit, but be it the harsh light of day or the dreamy humid nights, the show is entirely Farrell, as he suffers excesses, humiliations, and high-stakes gambits at the baccarat table, a game that, despite a voiceover tutorial, I am incapable of understanding, which is probably for the best as far as my pocketbook is concerned. La Grazia. Usually working in modes of youthful passion, furious exercise of power, or mythic spirituality, Paolo Sorrentino instead takes on the challenge of examining their inverse, a life absent of those animating spirits. Frequent collaborator Tony Servillo plays the president of Italy as he approaches the final half-year of a term that saw the relentlessly sensible jurist steering a grateful country from the brink of a chaotic crisis. A politician likened to reinforced concrete, his waning days find him wrestling with intertwined decisions regarding euthanasia, both for a beloved horse as well as an enshrined right for all human citizens, and clemency requests. Preoccupied with his own grief over his late wife and distance from his adult children, the film makes room for poetic images and big ideas to tangle in a contemplative coda of a life attempting to shock itself awake again. Early reactions suggest Ballad of a Small Player features a standout performance from Colin Farrell, with the film's visual style and thematic depth drawing significant praise. From the high stakes of the casino floor to the quiet contemplation of a nation's leader, we're now diving into a film that explores a life without animating spirits. Religious, the guitar solo that blew Bruce Springsteen's mind. The guitar solo that blew Bruce Springsteen's mind. Music is made up of many things, but at the center of all of it is great songwriting partnerships. You have John Lennon and Paul McCartney, Paul Simon and Art Garfunkel, and often one of the most overlooked dynamics, Tom Petty and Mike Campbell. There is something incredibly special about a writing partnership where no one member is attempting to outshine the other. You have some where the desire to write great songs often becomes some kind of competition. Paul McCartney was happy to admit that he, John Lennon and the other Beatles often found themselves going toe-to-toe and having a competitive nature about their writing style. "I suppose musically I'm competing with the other three," said McCartney, discussing writing within the Beatles and also their respective solo careers, "whether I like it or not. It's only human to compete." Tom Petty and Mike Campbell didn't have much of a rivalry. They championed the song as opposed to one another as individuals, with Petty having a knack for songwriting and lyrical ability, while Campbell was able to put together exciting blues lines and blistering solos. Petty was always incredibly happy about working with Campbell and described him as one of the very best in the world. "Mike really is the best in rock and roll," said Petty. "I'd be lost without him. I've played with Michael since 1970, so I wouldn't understand playing with anyone else. We write together, and we've developed a whole style of playing together." So, what is Campbell's secret? He has a playing style that straddles the line between rock, blues, and psychedelic music, which means he has a great range which he can take from when writing. Different riffs, chord progressions, and solo opportunities present themselves in his broad range of musical preferences, which he utilizes freely to make some of the most exciting solos in rock. He also uses spontaneity to his advantage, recognizing that while putting together layered and thoroughly produced guitar work can sound clean, releasing something which was the byproduct of a first take has a freshness to it. A lot of times we get one and then say, "Okay, let's double it," or "let's keep that and see if we can get one that's better." Then we spend some time with it, said Campbell, discussing his process when recording solos, but 95% of the time we go back to the first one because it always seems to have a freshness about it. Many great musicians recognize this spontaneous style of playing as something exciting. Bruce Springsteen, whose affinity for music has never waned in the decades that he's been making, once found himself incredibly drawn to one of Campbell's solos as he was there while it was being recorded. Given Campbell used the first take of 95% of his solos, Springsteen got to witness the off-the-cuff playing style that steered him in the right direction so frequently. Tom Petty recalled the moment Springsteen saw Campbell in action and described his reaction as religious. "Michael has played a lot of classic solos. He's very imitated," said Petty. "I heard the solo in Even the Losers from Damn the Torpedoes on the radio the other day, and that's pretty staggering. I remember Bruce Springsteen was sitting there with us when we did that solo, and old Bruce just got religious." This anecdote highlights the profound impact of Mike Campbell's spontaneous guitar work, resonating deeply with musical legends like Bruce Springsteen. From the electrifying solos that define rock and roll to the quiet introspection of a cinematic portrait, we're now exploring a film that delves into the life of a former president contemplating his legacy. And that's a wrap on today's Shady Spotlight. We covered the raw, fearless portrait of Bruce Springsteen in Deliver Me From Nowhere, a film hailed for its deep dive into an artist's soul. We also explored the legendary songwriting partnership of Tom Petty and Mike Campbell and the unforgettable guitar solo that left Bruce Springsteen speechless. Plus, we got a glimpse into the dark, neon-lit world of Macau with Ballad of a Small Player, and a contemplative look at a president's life in Grazia. Did any of these stories blow your mind? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Shady Spotlight for more deep dives, and hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. You can also follow us on all our social media channels for behind-the-scenes content and more. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.